Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'm very excited to share what I know about system options with you. So let's get going. My name is Kaylin Helmick, and welcome to my webinar, System Options That Won't Let You Down. If you have any questions, there will be an answer. Just type your question in the Q&A section, and I have Augustine here helping me answer questions live. And if we cannot get to your question, we will be reaching out to you over email afterwards. And it looks like we actually have a really great turnout, which is great. I'm so glad that you were all able to come together right now for this webinar. Oh, and is there anyone here named Jude? If so, I just want to say hey. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. I promise I won't stay in PowerPoint for too long, just about 3 minutes or so. I do prefer to do my webinars in SOLIDWORKS because when I use SOLIDWORKS, I feel happy inside. But first, I just wanted to take a minute to introduce who GoEngineer is. GoEngineer is a company that offers a variety of training and resources. We offer classroom training with 20 plus SOLIDWORKS classes available, hosting from locations throughout the US, and we have online training available too, with over a dozen live instructor-led SOLIDWORKS classes available from the convenience of your office or from your work from home office. We also have a variety of online resources available, including a comprehensive knowledge base built up from over 20 plus years of technical experience. We also have over 2,000 YouTube videos from how-tos, tips and tricks to deep dive webinars. Like this one. This webinar will be posted to our YouTube later in the month. It is being recorded. So you can always go to our YouTube, hit subscribe. That way you'll see this video when it's there. And you can also check out the other webinars that have happened in the past and view those. We also have certifications for SOLIDWORKS. I don't know who is aware of the fact that SOLIDWORKS has a certification program, but it's a great way to prove to employers how much you really know about SOLIDWORKS. And employers, it's a great way to know how much your employees know about SOLIDWORKS. And you get 2 free certification tests for every seat on active SOLIDWORKS subscription with us, with over 18 tests to choose from. I personally have taken many of those tests, and with a little bit of study, they're not too hard, and it's great to have on your resume. We also offer some support and services, including technical support. So if you're having an issue in SOLIDWORKS and you're struggling to figure it out, you can call us up, and we have lots of experience helping with troubleshooting with things like that. So we'd be happy to help you. And we have SOLIDWORKS training, like I mentioned on the last slide. And we also have 3D printers and print a part services available. We also offer some other services, including hosting, PDM implementation, rendering and animations, as well as CAD automation. We have GoEngineer offices across the country, including some in the Midwest that are not listed here. I am from the Dallas office, so if you're from Texas, reach out. I'd love to get to know you. Or if you just like my vibes, let's connect. I love meeting new SOLIDWORKS users. Let's go ahead and jump over to SOLIDWORKS now, and we'll get into kind of the meat of our webinar. So this webinar is about system options. And the reason that I wanted to have a webinar about system options is because when I was younger, so much younger than today, I didn't know system options were a thing. And I was really missing out on the ability to customize SOLIDWORKS. And that's the thing about SOLIDWORKS, is something that sets it apart is its ability to balance capability and ease of use. And one of the ways that it does this is by allowing you to customize your interface. So if you don't know how to customize your interface, you are definitely missing out. But thankfully you're here and you're ready to learn. So let's go ahead and dive in. So something important I want to note before we get started going through all these different options that we have available to us is that we have 2 tabs here. We have system options and we have document properties. And in this webinar, we will be focusing on the system options tab. The document properties tab works a little bit different, and you really need to know this. If you make any changes in the document properties tab, you'll have to save that part, assembly, or drawing as a new template so that you can access those changes that you've made every time you open SOLIDWORKS rather than just the current section that you're in. Meanwhile, system options, if you make a change and you save it, then they will stay there and they'll be available to you automatically every time you open SOLIDWORKS. So I mentioned in the webinar description that one of the best ways that I've used system options is as a troubleshooting tool. So for example, if another SOLIDWORKS user contacts me and they're saying, hey, I'm having this issue, I don't really know what's going on or why this is happening, I often look at the system options first to see if it's an issue within system options. For example, I get a lot of calls about these folders that we see in the feature tree. People will ask me things like, where did my sensors folder go? What about my equations folder? It was there last time I used SOLIDWORKS and now it's gone. And usually that's because of your settings within system options. So let's try using our system options as a troubleshooting tool. So the way that I do this is the keyword that my customer gave me was sensors and also feature tree. So I'll go here to the search options box and I'll go ahead and search for sensors. And we can see that there is an option for sensors in the feature manager system options. And so if we click that, we're brought to this page where we're shown various hide and show tree items options. And right here is our sensors folder. And we can see that our sensors folder is currently set to automatic. Our other options are hide and show. Show means that the sensors folder will always be shown in the feature tree. Hide means that it will always be hidden. And automatic means that it will only be there if there's something in that folder. So currently I have it set to automatic and we can see that my sensor folder is not being displayed. So that means that I likely just don't have anything in my sensors folder and that's why it's not being displayed. If you use sensors a lot and you always want to be able to see your sensor folder, you can set it to always show. Or if you absolutely never use sensors, you can set to hide. So let's go ahead and go back to general and we'll go ahead and start working through some of these options. And there are a lot of different options that you can choose. And so even though this webinar is going to be about 30 to 40 minutes, we will not have time to go through all of these different options. So I will be focusing on the ones that I think are the most interesting or important for you to know. And let's go ahead and dive in. The very first item that I have is maximum recent documents displayed, and I have it set to 50. So what does that mean? That means when you open that welcome menu in your recent documents section, you will be able to view 50 different documents at one time. This could be too much for what you're working on, or it could be too little, just depending on how many different projects you work on at one time. Let's go back to that system option, and I'm going to leave mine at 50. I'm just going to let it be. And what does this mean though? Include documents opened from other documents. Well, that means that if I go and I'm in an assembly and I go ahead and open a part from that assembly, then do we want this part to be included in my recent documents? In my case, yes. When I open parts from within assemblies, I do want them to be included in my recent documents. So I'll go ahead and check that box. Open last used documents at startup. This is a really good one, and I didn't know about this one for a very long time. I don't know if it's relatively new and I was just missing it, or if it could be something that's been around forever and I just never noticed. So open last used documents at startup. If you tend to work on the same projects over and over again, like maybe I've spent years working on the submarine, and it gets to the end of my day, I have to go home, but I was right in the middle of working on something, and I want to maybe just put my computer in sleep because I don't want to go through all the trouble of opening all the files up the next day. Well, that's what that option does, is it allows us to go ahead and close SOLIDWORKS at the end of the day. And then when we open up SOLIDWORKS again, it will open up all the files that we currently had open when we close SOLIDWORKS. So it's like SOLIDWORKS will be restored to what you had open yesterday. So that's a really good one. I love that one. It's not so great though if you're working on different projects every day. So just kind of gauge whether or not you tend to work on the same projects over and over again. Input dimension value. What does that mean? So this one's actually kind of funny, and I personally don't feel like I would ever use it, but let's go ahead and start a new part. Do I currently have that checked? Let's double check. Input dimension value. So yes, I do use input dimension value. I don't want to uncheck dimension value. Because what that does, let's go ahead and make a couple lines. Just going to make a couple lines here. And if I go to dimension these lines, this is what SOLIDWORKS usually does. I click and then this modify box pops up and then I can type in my dimension and be done, right? If we turn off that option, turn off input dimension value, then now when we go and add our smart dimension, the modify box won't pop up. It'll just go with the dimension that I had there. And if I wanted to edit it, I would have to double click it and go into it. So that's kind of a pain because I never draw my line the correct length the first time. So definitely have that one selected, input dimension value. Single command per pick. So if you tend to use these tools only one at a time, maybe I'm drawing like lots of lines. I can draw lots of lines at a time, right? But if you tend to only draw one line or one circle at a time, then this option might be good for you, single command per pick, because now what happens is when I select the circle, for example, it will only draw one circle and then it will escape out of that circle tool. It's no longer selected. I would have to reselect it if I wanted to make another circle. If I'm in this mode and I like this is good for me, but I happen to want to make 3 circles at one time, I can double click it and then make 3 circles in a row. And I would have to deselect it to get back out of it. So I personally tend to make like a lot of lines at once or a lot of rectangles at once. So I do not like this. I am deselecting that. Show thumbnail graphics in Windows Explorer. What does that mean? I'm going to go ahead and open up my Windows Explorer. I'm going to navigate to some files real quick. Let me find something. So I have some files here in my Windows Explorer, and they are all in isometric view. We can see a preview of the part. And what that option means is instead of having an isometric view of the part, you would have like a little thumbnail view of the part like we see up here in this tab. It would just indicate that it was a part file. And some people like to have that option off so you're not seeing the isometric view of the part because they say that their Windows Explorer loads faster that way. I'm a very visual person and I haven't had an issue with my files loading quickly in my Windows Explorer, so I like to leave that setting as displaying the isometric view. Definitely, for sure. I like my thumbnail graphics in Windows Explorer. Use System Separator for dimensions. So you know how we live in the US probably. If you do 32.4, that's a period between the 2 and the 4, right? Some other countries will use a comma instead, and that's what you can define here, whether you want to use a period or a comma or whatever other symbol you want to use. Enable confirmation corner. So that's this right here, where you can exit out of the sketch or you can cancel out of the sketch. This is called the confirmation corner. Even if you don't really find that you use these very often, they're not taking up very much room and they're transparent. So I see no harm in leaving them there. So I like to have those there for sure. Auto show property manager. So that's when you go and you select a sketch entity, this property manager comes up. I personally never really use it, but I also see no harm with it popping up. If you disable that and it doesn't pop up when you click a sketch entity, it will still pop up when you're creating a feature or editing a feature. What else do we have? Auto size property manager when panels are split. That's exactly what it sounds like. Enable feature expert. That's a good one to have. It enables tools to help with errors and fillets and drafts. So I like that for troubleshooting. We like that one. Enable freeze bar. If you've never used the freeze bar before, I'm going to show you that real quick because the freeze bar is really great, especially if you're working with larger parts. This is the freeze bar up here, this little yellow line that I'm hovering over. And you can click and drag the freeze bar down in your feature tree. And what it does is it freezes all the items above that freeze bar. So it kind of locks them into place. And also when you rebuild, it will no longer rebuild those items. We're basically telling SOLIDWORKS, like, we're not concerned with modifying these anymore or rebuilding them. We're only focusing on the features below the freeze bar. So that's definitely good if you have a large model and your SOLIDWORKS is running slowly. And then we also have this option right here is good to point out. Show latest technical alerts and news in welcome dialog. If you don't have consistent internet access, you might want to turn this one off because it does like connect to the internet to get this information. So that's up to you and your internet speed. I don't mind it. I have good internet, so I like to leave that on. Now we're moving on from general. We have MBD, which is very specific if you're using MBD or not, so we're skipping that. Drawings. There's lots of things you can do with drawings, so this will be a fun one to go through. Let me take a sip of water first. Eliminate duplicate model dimensions on insert. What does that mean? So let's go over to a drawing. Eliminate duplicate model items. So when you're doing model items, that option is the same as this checkbox here, eliminate duplicates. So if you check that in the system options, then that checkbox will automatically be checked when you go to model items. I like that one because I do not like to have duplicate dimensions. So I liked SOLIDWORKS to just take care of that for me. So I leave this one checked. Automatically scale new drawing views. So a lot of people don't know that SOLIDWORKS is actually doing this, but I'm going to go ahead and delete these views here. And when I go to insert views, SOLIDWORKS actually attempts to scale my drawing view based on trying to fit 4 different views on this drawing. So it takes my size of my drawing and it scales my model to try to fit my views. So I have my one view there, I'll do another view there, another view there, and another view there. And we can see that it actually does fit pretty well. I didn't do it super organized, but it did actually scale my model relatively well to fit on that page. So I like that one. That's a good one to have. We also have select hidden entities. I do not like to have that selected because when I'm in a drawing view, I like to select things that I can already see. I don't like to have to watch out for selecting entities that I can't see. So, it'd be a pain if I was trying to select something and I accidentally select something that's hidden instead. So I don't really like that one, but maybe you will. Maybe you can give that a try if you want to. We also have in this menu, another good one to point out is our detail view scaling. So we have this detail view scaling option, and right now it's set to 2 times. That's when you go and you do a detail view of your part. This section is currently set so it's 2 times the size of whatever the scale is. So it's going to be twice as big. And if that's too much or too little for you for whatever reason, you can change that here in your detail view scaling. The next item is keyboard movement increment. And what we're talking about there is how far this view will move if you click the arrow keys on your keyboard. So you can make that more or less precise depending on what you need. And now we'll move on to display style. And that's display styles in drawings. You could see that my drawing view is hidden lines removed right now. So that's the display style type that I have. But you can also change that so the default's shaded. If you do a lot of shaded drawings, you will have to delete your views and bring them back in. I know my selection box is really weird right now, but I'll show you that in a second too. So I'm going to bring my views back in, and we can see that now they default to this other display style. It defaults to the, what is this called? I'm blinking. The shaded with hidden lines removed style. So you see in this view, when I click on this, it's defaulting to this display style when before it was defaulting to this display style. You can still change them from here, but the default will just be the other option. So you can change what you want your default to be in your display style section. I like hidden lines removed. That's pretty typical for a drawing. Also, we have quality. How high quality do you want your drawings to be? And for both the wireframe and hidden views and also the shaded edge views, the high quality it's really reserved for if you need greater precision. And the draft quality really works well for faster performance with large assemblies. So if you're having issues with performance in your drawings, definitely try switching into draft quality. Okay, let's go to area, hatch, and fill. And this area is it's pretty self-explanatory. I just want you to know that it's here. You can do no hatch, you could do a solid, or you can do hatch. And you can even choose your hatch pattern or your scale of your hatch, as well as the angle that these lines are at. So you can customize your hatch if you don't like the typical what's included. Let's go down to colors. And I've heard people complain before, like, why is this gray so ugly? And I think that's just pretty funny. And it's personal preference, really. If you grew up using a different software, AutoCAD or Inventor, it might seem a little bit different than what you're used to. You can customize those colors here. Like there's lots of different colors to choose from. And lots of different items that you can change the color of too. And then of course you can change the background appearances here too, which is good. So definitely check that out if the color of something bothers you. Just be really careful not to select like the same color for everything because that will make things really, really confusing. We don't want that. We don't want to be confused while we're trying to design. Let's move on to sketch. So we have some different sketch options. This is my favorite. Out of all the system options, this is my favorite system options. Definitely have this one checked. Okay, so what is this? Auto rotate view, normal to sketch plane on sketch creation and sketch edit. So this first part has been there for a while. I think at least 5 years, this auto rotate view, normal to sketch plane on sketch creation. But this sketch edit part is relatively new. I think it's just within the last year or two that they added and sketch edit. And that one's huge because you're probably used to when we go to start a sketch. We're going to go ahead and start a sketch. And when we go to start a sketch, our view is brought normal to whatever plane we're sketching, right? We're used to that. We've seen that before. Okay. What's new is that when I go, let me undo my freeze bar here. When I go and I edit a sketch that already exists, it brings the view normal to the sketch that I'm editing. Before it would just stay like this. And that was super annoying because then I had to get normal to it or move my mouse around so I could see all the dimensions. So definitely have that one checked if you have that option. If you have one of the newer versions of SOLIDWORKS, you should. Okay. And then other good ones, use fully defined sketches. This is totally up to you, but basically what this does is it makes sure that your sketch is fully defined before you're allowed to use it for a feature. So I can see some companies really requiring this. Maybe they have a bunch of interns that never fully define their sketch. I'm guilty of it. Sometimes I've done that before. And what it'll do is it'll give you a little message saying that you can't make a feature because the sketch is not fully defined, or it'll say something like, please select a fully defined sketch. So I don't plan on designing any like space shuttles anytime soon, so it's not critical to me to have all fully defined sketches all the time. Maybe I'm showing another SOLIDWORKS user something really quick and I don't want to have to fully define my sketch. So it's up to you and your company what would be best for you on this one. We have different displays that you can choose from, different display options. We have an option, where'd it go? I'm missing it. Oh, there it is. Prompt to close sketch. So when you're trying to exit out of a sketch, it'll prompt you. It'll say, please close your sketch. Your sketch isn't closed. Do you want us to close your sketch? It'll say something along those lines. And this might not always be good, actually, because there are some features that don't require a closed sketch to create. So I have that on because I don't mind saying, no, I don't want to close my sketch, but that's up to you. Create sketch on new part. Okay, what does that mean? That one's actually kind of cool. It means that when I go and I start a new part, it'll automatically bring me into a sketch. I just started a brand new part and I'm already making a sketch. Like I have my sketch tool selected and I'm even normal to a plane. So that's really cool. If that's the first thing you do when you start a new part is you get right into sketching and you want to skip the part where you have to select your plane, that's a great option for you. However, the downside of this is you might not always want to start a sketch right away. Maybe your company likes to define the material right away. Or also, you are required to always start your sketch on the front plane, which I think is a little silly. So if you always start your sketch on the front plane, this tool is perfect for you. If you like to vary it up, then maybe it's not, because then now you have the extra step of exiting your sketch and choosing a new plane, for example. So I thought that one was interesting when I first learned about it. Okay, where were we? We're in sketch. Okay. We also have override dimensions with drag and move. I don't like this one. I'm going to let this one be because when I drag and move my sketch, I don't want my dimension to change. That's what this means. And clicking and dragging just isn't as accurate as I want to be with my sketches. I want to be able to enter in the exact dimension that I have. And sometimes I also click and drag my sketch just to see what isn't fully defined, because sometimes it'll be blue and I won't completely understand why it's not fully defined. And I'll click and drag, and that would defeat the whole purpose if my dimensions became overridden when I did that. So I don't like this option. I leave this one unchecked. And then another good one I want to point out that I had a call about one time is this one, scale sketch on first dimension created. Usually when I create a sketch, I do the general shape of the sketch, and then I add in all the dimensions. And when I add in that first dimension, I want the rest of the geometry of my sketch to scale appropriately based on what I said that first dimension was. And so that's what that does, scale sketch on first dimension creation. So I like that one. SolidWorks just doesn't feel right without it, and that's why I got the call. They were like, something's wrong with my SolidWorks because they had accidentally unchecked this. Okay, let's go to relation and snaps. So I love snapping. I don't see why you wouldn't want to snap. That's why I have my options checked for snapping. If you're ever trying to create maybe a sketch and it's snapping and you don't want it to snap, you can always hold down the control key to temporarily disable the snapping. So I leave them all selected and I hold down control if I need it to not snap. If I need it to not snap. Automatic relations. I love automatic relations. I feel like it's a big component of SolidWorks is being able to do automatic relations. And that's when you're creating a line. And do you see how I get my relation previews? Like this would be a horizontal line. And it's automatically going to add that relation for me. We can see that relation has now been added. And so it won't do that if you deselect that option. And I don't think that's a good thing at all. I want my relations to be added. I feel like SolidWorks usually, you really use relations and dimensions in order to fully define your sketch. And I feel like it'd be a pain to add all those relations manually afterwards. Like if I made a horizontal line, I want it to be horizontal. If I didn't want it to be horizontal, I would have made it at an angle. So that's what automatic relations means. Sketch snaps. These are all the things that you can snap your sketch to. I have everything selected except for grid. I know that AutoCAD users like to have a grid and they like to be able to snap to a grid. I just don't think it makes as much sense in SolidWorks or 3D design. So again, that's up to you and your preference if you like grids or not. Let's go to display. We're making our way down the list. All the key stuff is really at the top half of the list. So once we get it towards the end, it's all self-explanatory. So we're making good progress so far. Hidden edges displayed as solid or dashed. Okay, I feel like the standard is that you have dashed hidden lines. I feel like solid could get really confused because now you're like, is this solid line an actual edge or is it a hidden edge? And they say, no, it's okay. Like there's difference. The solid lines are a lighter gray color. I still feel like dashed lines makes it more clear that's a hidden line. At least that's what I was taught in school was you always do hidden edges as dashed lines. We have, what else do we have here? Assembly transparency for in-context edits. So I prefer to leave this as the opaque option, and I hide and show my components as needed when I'm working in my assemblies. So that's the way I like it there. And also I want to point out that this is where you can control your breadcrumbs. So let's go ahead and see what these breadcrumbs look like real quick. If you don't know, if you're not using breadcrumbs, I highly recommend it. They're great. So a breadcrumb is when I select on a component of my part, I get this series of icons up here. These are called breadcrumbs. They essentially leave a trail of like how I got to where I am now. So by just clicking on a section, I can see what the process was to create that section. So I like my breadcrumbs. And they're not taking up very much space. So it's not a huge pain if they're there and you're not using them. There's another option for breadcrumbs though, and that is to show your breadcrumbs at your mouse pointer. So for example, I'll select here and we can see my breadcrumbs are now right here instead of in the upper left area of my graphics area. I think this looks a little too cluttered. I'm used to having my breadcrumbs up here too, so I like to leave that unchecked. I'm not a huge fan of that one. So I'm going to uncheck show breadcrumbs at mouse pointer. Selection. There's only one that I want to show you here, and that's the default bulk selection method. So everybody's used to the box, I feel. Like that's a box selection, right? But I think 5 years ago or so, they added the lasso selection method too. And so that looks like this. I personally don't like that as much. I don't feel like I have as much control as I do in the box selection method, but once again, totally up to you. And that's really true about SolidWorks is that there's so many ways of doing the same thing that it's really up to your personal preference and the goals that you're trying to accomplish, which method you choose. Let's go to performance. Everybody gets excited about performance because I feel like everybody wants their SolidWorks to run just a little bit better. We have verification on rebuild, which enables advanced body checking. Most of the time you may not need this, but it does catch some underlying issues. So that's up to you. Ignore self-intersection check for some sheet metal features. So if you work with sheet metal features a lot, you'll know that sometimes you have a common edge issue in flat patterns that might not actually really be an issue. So if that's your case, you should check that for sure. Transparency. Transparency in larger complex files may really affect performance, so you might not want that to be high quality transparency. Up to you. You can choose the level of detail. And then one other thing I want to mention on this page is your mate animation speed. So when you're creating an assembly and you're mating two components together, you know how like you create the mate and then one of them moves towards the other like pretty slowly. You can change it so that it happens faster if you want, or you can turn it off altogether. Maybe you don't care about that animation, and that will save you time because now SOLIDWORKS isn't having to generate like that movement happening. So that's a good one to check out too. Assemblies. Move components by dragging. Maybe you wouldn't want this if you imported a large assembly or you had components that weren't mated together. You might not want to be able to do that. Save new components in external files. This could be helpful if you're doing a lot of top-down modeling. It's basically the idea of in-context parts being stored inside the actual assembly until it's ready to be saved into an actual file. Or if you select this, it will start off on your hard drive right from the beginning. So up to you if you use a lot of top-down modeling. And then we have some large assembly settings. And basically what this does is when you have this box selected, you'll be using your lightweight mode and your large assembly settings when the number of components exceeds the number that you describe here. So you can tell SOLIDWORKS exactly what you consider to be a large assembly, and then it will pick up these settings whenever you open one of those components. Okay, let's keep going. Default templates. This is exactly what I was talking about when I said that the document properties, you would have to save a template of your part, assembly, or drawing. And then you'll have to go to this tab and you'll have to connect that template to your default templates. And we do have videos about this on YouTube. I'm not going to get into it right now, but if you go onto our YouTube and search default templates, you'll find all sorts of information on that. File locations. This is where you can add or change locations for storing anything from document templates to bill of materials and even textures. So check this out if you want to know like how much more you can customize SOLIDWORKS. There's so many different things you can customize and store here to use. Okay, the last major section that we'll be going through is the Feature Manager. Scroll selected item into view. This is nice sometimes when you're trying to identify a feature or a specific part in the tree, but it's not always desired if you don't want the tree for moving around. I do like to scroll within my feature tree. It helps me to kind of only view what I need to look at one time, so I like to have that selected. Name feature on creation. So this is a cool one because if you like to have all your features named, like, oh, this is the revolve that is part of the base of the thing that I'm making, then it will prompt you to actually name the feature as you're creating it. So I did an internship one time where they really liked everything in the feature tree to be named. And so we used this name feature tree on creation as kind of a way of making sure I did that. So that's a cool one. Arrow key navigation. This is, you can use arrows to navigate the feature tree, go up and down. I had a question about this in my last webinar, so that's cool. Dynamic highlight. Another way to identify features in the graphic area when you hover over the item in the feature tree. So I might hover over an item and then it'll show me in the graphics area what I'm highlighted over. Use transparent flyout feature manager tree in parts and assemblies. Okay, so that's like if you go and you're editing a part, you get this flyout feature manager design tree. Right now it has a transparent background, which means we can see the graphics area in the background. And what this setting does, if you uncheck it, is it makes it like a solid background instead. So I think that looks pretty interesting. A lot of people haven't seen this before, so I'm going to go ahead and show you. But it looks like this instead. I don't really see the point in that. I like transparent, but if it's hard for you to view the names on a transparent background, maybe this would be good for you. And just a couple more items for you guys. We have, oops, I'm in the wrong section. Oh, there it is. Okay. we have show translated feature names in FeatureManager tree. So this one's new. This one was just introduced in SOLIDWORKS 2021, but it allows you to select a language and then it will display that language as a secondary language in your feature tree. So for example, I have my boss extrude, and then I have that in another whatever language I choose here. And I actually had someone reach out to me and ask if I spoke whatever language I had there at the time, because I was doing a demo and I'd left it like that, but then like it got posted to YouTube and then they watched it on YouTube, and it was a pretty funny situation. Hide and show tree items. That's the section here. I already kind of explained that when I was showing our search options, but there's lots of things that you can either choose to hide or display on your feature tree. So check that out if you want to add some of these to your feature tree. And then we have spin box increments, and that's when you're adding a dimension. You have those little arrows after your dimension that you can click up and down, and you can choose how much your dimension will change when you click those arrows. We have a section to change your views and your transitions. We have a section to choose how you back up and auto recover. For example, I have it set to save auto recover information every 1 minute, but maybe I'm not very productive in 1 minute, so maybe I want it to save every 5 minutes instead. Don't tell my boss I said that, but I really will need to save every 5 minutes. Touch, if you use touch mode, I don't use touch mode, but you can change it from right-handed to left-handed. You can change your whole wizard and toolbox features, and really the rest are self-explanatory. I think you'll understand them. And finally, one last thing I want to show you is that you have this reset button. So if you made a lot of changes, it's all right. If you're overwhelmed with all the changes you made and you don't want them anymore, you can reset all your options back to what the default is, or you can reset whatever page you're currently on. So I'm going to go ahead and reset all my options. And now it's back to like the default factory settings essentially of our system options. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my PowerPoint for, oops, I'm just switching files instead. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my PowerPoint for one more slide. And then that will conclude the webinar. Of course, it went back to the beginning. So I just want to thank you once again for joining me for this webinar. I hope that now that you've explored some of your system options and maybe changed a few things, I've brought your feet back to the ground. And I also want to let you know that you can sign up or subscribe to our newsletter, to training, and also to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can just search GoEngineer on any of these platforms and you'll find us. Thank you again for joining my webinar, or if you're on YouTube, thank you for watching this on YouTube.